Summer's coming and we're gonna need some racing frames. Today we're looking at this Real ACC Angle 220. Now if you looked out on Banggood and looked at their frames, they have another one that looks very similar to this. It's called the Angle 220S. This is not an S. And you would think, oh, the S means stretch. Well, this one is also a stretch, so anyway. We'll talk about those differences here in a little bit. But for now, this is what the box looks like. Let's open this up and see what comes inside. Here are all the parts laid out. Now one thing that's kind of cool about this frame, they put these little, what is it called, riveted or whatever this is called, the little countersunk screws are supposed to go in here to help hold this together. And you actually have 3 on each arm that you'll use to put it together. Now this is a little bit unique frame. If you look here, you can see how the holes are not lined up straight down the arm. They're kind of angled off to the left. And that is because this is the Angle 220. The Angle 220 is set up so that you put the arms together in one pattern, and you can put it this way and put the pod up on top here going this direction, or you can take it and just basically rotate it 90 degrees, and then you put the pod on the other way so it's stretched wide. So this one can be stretched forward and backward, or rotate the pod 90 degrees and it stretches wide. Now the cool thing about that is that you don't even have to change the arms, and the arms are cut with those holes, and that's what provides all that magic. And they're not too close to the edge, as you can see, so they shouldn't have any tendency to break. And you have 3 screws in there. Actually, you'll have 2 plus your your flight board in there. But anyway, you'll have at least 2 screws in every arm, helping hold the frame together. Another thing I like about these frames, and I've been seeing this a lot, is when the top and the bottom plate aren't the same. And I like it because I think it looks cooler. You don't have, you know, the top and bottom plate matching up perfectly, and so it just gives a little bit better look to the frame itself. Here's the frame partially put together. Now, like I was saying, this is the middle plate, and you can see here, like, this is a little bit larger hole and this is a smaller hole. And the larger hole is to accommodate these little, I don't know, these nuts of some kind. They slip, the holes are a little bit larger, and these will slip down in those holes. Well, they will when you tighten up the screw. And it'll pull down inside there, and basically it's, instead of having a regular nut up here, you have to hold with a pair of pliers. These will actually eat into the carbon fiber a little bit and provide some grip, so that way you can really crank down on them and tighten your frame up so it's not flopping around. Now also on here you'll see it has these middle holes here, and this is where the flight board screws will go through. Now this actually came with some really short screws and a little bit kind of medium screws and a few longer ones, but it had mostly this size here. 2 of these 10mm screws will hold on the arms. Each of the arms are going to be held on in the middle and out here on the outer edge, and they go up there into those little nuts. Then the longer ones will actually be used to go through the middle to connect onto the nylon spacers to hold your flight board into place. Like I was saying before, on the 220, the 4 arms just sit in the same place, and they just rotate 90 degrees to determine whether or not you want a stretch front to back or a stretched side to side. Now the 220S, which looks a lot the same, is not so much the same. Okay, so with this one, if you put the arms on here and you use the 2 outer screws, then you're going to end up with a stretched X frame, and this is on the 220S, not on the one we're looking at. So if you change it up and use the 2 inner screws on the 220S, which is the one we're not looking at, then it goes into a standard X form. So if you want a straight X form, then you're going to want the 220S. If you want a stretched front to back or side to side, then you're going to want the other frame, the not S, the 220, you know, the one we're looking at here in the video. So here's the frame assembled, and if you look here, you can kind of see these nuts here, right there. This one is actually tightened down, and it pulls down into the carbon fiber, which gives it some grip, so you can tighten down on these screws down here and it won't spin it up there. This one up here is not tightened up, and you can see how it's kind of sticking up a little bit. And there's those little vertical lines underneath there, the little grooves, and when you're tightening this up, you want to tighten it up till those grooves disappear down into the carbon fiber, and that's what's going to help hold it to the carbon fiber. So here's the caliper, and these are, I believe, 25mm because it feels kind of short. There we go. 25mm spacers. Yep. And these arms, see how thick these are? They're about 4mm arms, is kind of what I was hoping for. And they're about 12.3 wide, so not too bad there. This top plate is 2mm thick. These bottom plates really don't matter much since there's really two of them kind of sandwiching it. But the middle one is 2 and the bottom one is 1.5. That's okay. There's nothing really special about having a thick one down here if you're going to have 2 of them sandwiching this together. Now if you're going to have one plate on the bottom of your frame, you really want it to be a thick one, because it's going to be holding all the it's going to be taking all the stress from the arms and not sharing it with another thinner plate like this. So anyway, that's not too bad. This whole top plate up here is about 37 millimeters or so. And the nice thing about this is it has the battery strap holders here on top, so you can run your battery up on top, or you can try to run it down on the bottom, but you're going to be running your battery strap in between the little nuts up here so that it'll have something to hold on to, because you're not going to squeeze it through there because there's no space. Up here in the front, this camera holder is designed for something that's about 27 millimeters wide, which is not going to be your micros. It's going to be more of your HS1177 size of camera. Here I have the PDB installed just to give a little bit of size here and see how it looks. Now one thing that's kind of nice about this frame, it has these holes back here, and what those could be used for, if you hook your battery up to here, or your wires up here for your battery, and come out the back, you can take a zip tie and zip tie it down to the bottom plate. That way when you're back here pulling on the battery cable, or if the battery comes out and yanks on the battery cable, it's going to put stress on those zip ties instead of up here on your solder pads. So that is a really good thing to have, and I wish more frames would actually do that. Now, the one thing I'm kind of disappointed about is, here's an HS1177 style camera. This one is broken and was covered in hot glue at one point. Okay, so here it is, and if I slide this back here, the holes don't quite line up with the holes on the camera mounts. They're a little bit low, and I can't go up anymore because it's bumping up its head against the top plate here. So I can't get this in here in a way that the holes can actually line up. Well, I guess if I do that, but now it's not even straight, so it can't fit. So I don't know how you're supposed to mount an HS1177 style camera in here. So if you're actually going to use this 77 style camera, you're going to want to mount it not with these things. You're going to have to use some 3D printed things. But even then, it comes in here, and if I push it in hard, like, that was bad. Push it in here like this. This is actually flush down here on the bottom, right there at this corner, and up here it's touching the top of the frame. And so it's, I don't know, it's not going to fit in there very well. And even back here you can see where the camera power cable comes in. It's going to be fighting with space for your with your flight board to try to fit in there. And also, you see how much of the camera is sticking out. That's not too big of a deal, but it's just knowing that there is some, and anything you hit, if any pressure hits on here, it's going to be, you know, onto your camera and also be pushing back onto your flight board. So the idea of this is cool, but I don't think you're going to be flying with an HS1177. You're going to be having to get some kind of micro, and then have some adapters 3D printed to hold the micro in place. So that part of the frame, yeah, not so thrilled about. Looking back here on the back, there's not any real good way to mount your VTX to the upper plate, but a lot of people, especially the ones that are doing racing, are just putting their video transmitter right up on top of their stack or inside between their stack with some larger spacers between the two boards to try to put some room inside there and kind of sandwich it in with some foam tape. And then they take the antenna and they run the antenna out here along the rear arm and just tape it on there, or they use some 3D printed stuff to kind of hold the arm on one or the other. But the video transmitter antenna, if you put it to the rear arm and tape it on there, it'll probably be fine for racing, you know, especially when you're not going out very far. You might have a little bit of breakup when it turns at a certain angle and it's all going through the carbon fiber. But for the most part, for racing, taping the VTX antenna to the rear arm shouldn't be an issue. This is advertised as an XS220, and it is spot on 220. With the frame fully assembled, if I put it on the scale, it comes in about 78 grams. If I throw on the included battery strap, it adds on about 3.4 grams. And here's the power distribution board, which is also included. This has a 5 volt and a 12 volt output. So the power to put this on here too, it goes up to about 87.3, 87.6 grams. So not too bad of a frame. Most ultralight frames are going to run anywhere between 70 to 90, and so this one would kind of classify as a heavier ultralight frame. So it'd probably be pretty good, especially with the 4mm arms. So here's the Engel 220 sitting next to the B-Fight 210. This is stretched, while this one is a standard X, and you can kind of get an idea of how much different they are. This is actually, I believe, a 210, where this one's a 220. But to achieve the stretched X form, they usually have to stretch the arms out a little bit to get them to not smack into the pod up here in the spacers. So here's a 5-inch prop, and if I center it over this hole here, you can see it's going to clear the frame with no problem at all. And the reason you can't really make this arm much shorter is because you're going to be coming close to hitting a prop on the other side, so you got to have it a little bit farther away from the body there. Also up here in the front, if I put this up here, you can also see it's going to clear this just fine. Now, some people used to be worried about seeing the props in their camera. Well, if you angle your camera up enough, the props may show up near the bottom, but you know, for the most part, I think people are kind of getting past seeing the props in the video. If you don't want to see props, the better thing to do is just get a GoPro and put it up on top, and then you don't have the issue at all. On a completely random note, I've been using these hemostats to help put my quad together. It makes it nice to grab the wire up near the end, hold it into the solder, and melt it onto the board. This helps a lot, and I do not understand how people are using their fingers to build these quads when they're so small inside. Anyway, totally different topic. Hemostats are your friend. They don't burn your fingers. Also, one other thing real quick. Look, they call this an Angel 220, whereas the website and everything else calls it an Engel 220. Well, take your pick of what you want to call it, but I think it's the Angle. No, I also have a hard time remembering which way to spell Angel versus Angle. I have to think about it every time. Anyway, this is the Engel 220 frame, not to be confused with the Engel 220S frame, which is also available. This should be a pretty decent racer. You better have your stacking skills up pretty good. Don't plan on making it too tall, because you only have 25mm of space in here, minus the height of these lock nuts down here. So anyway, if you have any questions about this frame, feel free to leave them in the comments, and I'll try to help you out as best I can. And as always, thanks for watching.